Hello and welcome to the special bonus episode of The Dairy Edge. Teagasc are running a weekly Let's Talk Dairy webinar series, which is also being made available as a podcast. On this week's webinar, Laurence Feeney joins Stuart Childs to discuss the role of the IHFA in Irish dairy breeding.
Welcome to this week's Let's Talk Dairy. So I've made a slight change to the schedule. I said to you last week that I was going to be talking to my colleague James Dunn in relation to the Ballyhaise Open Day. But just due to, I suppose, the way it's working out in terms of the date for Ballyhaise is the 13th of July. So I've pushed James back a week and I've brought on Laurence Feeney, who's the new CEO of IHFA, because the IHFA are running an open day, national open day at Aidan Frawley's in Ballytoig near Brewery in County Limerick next week. And I just thought it was a nice opportunity to actually talk to Laurence about maybe future direction for the IHFA under his stewardship, which is just after taking over. So I'm delighted to be joined by Laurence. As I said to you there when we were talking in preparation for today, I suppose pedigree was something that was really, really important to a lot of people when I would have started as an advisor back in the early 2000s. And I suppose in a sense, I suppose EBI has changed that somewhat slightly in that people are maybe less focused. Now you still have people that only want to use pedigree sires. And I suppose, where do you see that going, I suppose, in terms of the context of the IHFA now and where it's going to go into the future? And I suppose I'd just like to discuss your thoughts and what you're thinking, or what maybe some of your outline plans for where you want IHFA to go. And obviously then we'll talk a little bit about the open day as well and what people can expect on the day as well.
Yeah, thank you, Stuart. So look, and thanks for having me here. I think we're at an important time point, let's say, in cattle breeding in Ireland. And I think it's going to be some interesting times ahead. And I think there's a good role there for the IHFA and pedigree breeding in that. But I suppose it's about the black and white cow as much as anything, and what the Irish cow can deliver for Irish farmers. So if I just share my screen with you for a second, just to think about those topics, and I hope you can see that.
Yeah, that's working fine now. Yeah.
Perfect. So look, I suppose just to talk very briefly about IHFA's role within the industry and where we sit and what we do, and then I suppose we can talk about what way things are going to shape out over the future, or some of the potential challenges ahead. Our main role is to maintain the Irish Holstein Friesian herd book under EU legislation. And it's an open herd book. And what that means is we have progeny of current herd book animals are eligible for registration. And also then we have a grade up service whereby non-pedigree animals, if we can verify their ancestry, which we usually can do very easily through the ICBF database, they can be eligible for pedigree registration, so long as they have the qualities of the breed. Okay, so that gives an opportunity for people with good quality animals that want to recognize that to upgrade those to pedigree status. So, and what does the IHFA as an organization kind of represent then kind of comes in under that. So we have a very important role in genetic improvement. And I suppose that presents itself differently for different farms, right? But because the breeding goal for different farms can often be very different. If you're a typical spring calving system, you're going to be focused on EBI and you're going to want to make improvements there. If you're a winter milk herd with a fragmented land base, your breeding goal may be different, right? So IHFA has to represent that genetic diversity and that diversity of breeding goal, but always be focused on breed improvement for those goals. And some of that genetic diversity is good for the breed in general, because different bloodlines and different traits are become more important in different systems for different breeding goals. And that's something that can benefit everybody, perhaps at some point along the line, and particularly when breeding goals change, and we'll talk about that in a second. One of the key goals for the organization is always breeding for longevity, because a long-lived cow is going to be useful no matter what your breeding goal, no matter what your production system. It's almost always the case where we want cows to last longer in herds.
And I suppose the big advantage of the pedigree status in that scenario, Laurence will say, where cows are being scored or graded, we'll say, or classified, sorry, that's the correct term for it, the feet and legs and the udder placement and so forth, in terms of, like, we have seen some cows come through the EBI system that probably, while they may have the longevity, they actually end up being culled because of poor udders, or in particular, I suppose, bad leg angle, or poor leg angles and stuff like that, and just falling out of the system as a result of it, really.
Yeah, and I think, like, if we just kind of backtrack over cattle breeding in Ireland over the last number of years, we had, let's say, as a national herd and as a Holstein Friesian breed, we had a lot of challenges 10, 15 years ago with cow fertility. And, those challenges were dealt with in different ways. A portion of people would have used crossbreeding as a way of solving those problems. But the EBI and let's say the amount of good quality black and white cows there were in the country kind of meant that a lot of the improvement in fertility came through the black and white breed. And Holstein and Friesian, I suppose, kind of came from different sections of the population. But that cow fertility problem, we've seen huge gains in that over the last 10 or 15 years. And that's less of an issue now. We're a long way towards fixing that problem. But of course, what that means then is cows are lasting a little longer in herds. Calving patterns are a little bit better. So there's both the space in that you have less voluntary or less involuntary culling and more opportunity for voluntary culling. And also then your cows are living a little bit longer. So what happens when the cows live a little bit longer is different things start to become limiting factors. So yes, lameness, mastitis, quality of udders, the milkability of the cow, just the general manageability of the cow in the herd. Those things start to show up more in third, fourth, fifth lactation cows than they do in first, second, third lactation cows. So some of those traits that, let's say, IHFA would have always been strong on, and also some of the stuff that we record and measure through the classification service, I think are going to become more important in the future. And we have to now extend out on the gains that we've made through breeding for fertility by breeding for fertility plus a more robust cow that can last longer in general into 5-6 lactations average quite easily. And that's going to be good for profitability, and it's also going to be good for the environmental side of things, because those animals are going to have be more carbon efficient, and that particularly around the paying off the rearing period costs and stuff like that.
And then, Laurence, I suppose there could be a potential perception now, and maybe I might be wrong in saying this, that the IHFA can generally be associated with high type cows. I suppose the dairy show type cow that's going to be on the front of the farm exam in the end of October, etc. And where do they fit into commercial Irish dairy herds then? Like,
well, I suppose to some extent it depends on your farm system and your breeding goal, right? But realistically, for almost all systems, the cows you see in the show ring don't really represent the commercial cow. They're almost a separate breeding goal by themselves and a separate type of cow for themselves, very much suited to winning shows, but not necessarily representative of what though even for winter milk herds and for higher type herds, not necessarily even representative of the cows that you want to see in herds and the cows that people are breeding for in herds. Even though what the show ring has looked for over the years has changed, there was a time where it was the tallest cows that were winning the shows. Whereas now there is a bit more appreciation of a more balanced, more robust cow in the show ring. But even allowing for that, it's almost a separate event by itself. And I think the IHFA has always been, and one of the great strengths, Stuart, of pedigree breeding in Ireland is that no matter what you want to breed for yourself, the space within the Holstein Friesian breeds do it, So we have our Holstein Open Day in a couple of weeks' time, and we also have our Pure Friesian Open Day a couple of weeks after that as well. So you have, very different types of herds, very different types of cows, but there's space for it in the breed. The vast majority of people are breeding for a commercial, high solids, fertile animal that's going to last a long time, regardless of whether that's for a spring system or a winter milk system or any other type of system. The show cows get seen. It's you know what I mean. They're out there in public, but that's not necessarily representative of the what people are breeding for and what people want to see in general.
And I suppose an important point for people to note maybe as well is that while I said there that there's been a move away from the concern or the desire for to necessarily have pedigree status or to have pedigree bulls being used, there's still a lot of IHFA pedigree bulls in a lot of catalogues around the country. Like
there is, and look, there is issues there with full pedigree status versus SRM status on the bulls, and that comes back to the legislation part of it. So the full pedigrees basically are have the highest status within the herd book. I think it's important that people select bulls for their system and select bulls that are going to leave a profitable cow. There certainly is a lot of pure pedigree bulls that will do that, and we'd be hoping that IHFA members will continue to breed good bulls, because if you look at all the top bulls in AI in Ireland, for a start, all the top EBI bulls are Irish bred, or the vast majority of the top EBI bulls are Irish bred. That wasn't always the case. There was a time we were very much reliant on imported genetics. And I think it's a huge testament to Irish farmers and also to Teagasc and ICBF for their research, and the AI companies for their breeding programs, but also the Irish farmers for breeding them as well. That we have our own animals there and animals coming from Irish pedigree herds. So I think that will continue, and I don't get too caught up in the pedigree versus SRM because they're all good. You know what I mean? They all have a really high standard. The pedigree ones, the pure pedigree ones, have a higher value in the herd book, and they have a higher value for animal valuation for diseases and things like that. So it's not insignificant. But I think the most important thing is that we're focused on breeding the right type of cow for our systems.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So you have a couple of other points there in terms of the recognition of the quality is obviously the classification piece. What do you mean by social interaction then?
So I think some of the things that IHFA provide are not necessarily to do with the genetics; they're to do with the people. So we have a number of local clubs who have their own club activities, and then we have a number of our national activities. They're pretty centered around open days and field evenings and places where people can get together, have a social interaction, have a little bit of a pleasant time on farms, that's, you know, a little bit out of the normal working week, and kind of enjoy themselves and enjoy talking about cows, and enjoy time spent appreciating their cows, and stuff like that, and also learning from other farmers, seeing different systems, all of that side of things. And I think the whole kind of the whole social side of farming, obviously we need to keep to the fore, because, you know, farmers live it every day, 24/7, 365. So it's nice to be able to just step out of the work and grind for a little while, and spend some time with other people. And I suppose a lot of that feeds back into the youth development of the YMA, as we would call it, the Young Members Association. You know, I mean, we do a lot of work in that area, providing stuff that's to do with farming, cattle breeding for young people, but also stuff that's leads to, you know, personal development and career progression and things like that, that are, you know, of good life skills, as well as cattle skills, you know. So and I suppose another part of that social side of things, or let's say the non-breeding side of stuff that IHFA gets involved in, is we do try to do our best to fund research, and I suppose particularly Teagasc and Vista Milk, and UCD and Lions, but, you know, other areas as well, fund research that's going to help the whole industry for the future. And at the moment, that's all based around the environmental challenges that we have coming up. So, you know what I mean, we've been supporting some of the initiatives there on methane measuring and things like that, to just, I suppose, do our part for the industry as a whole.
Okay. I suppose just in terms of the environmental focus, would you have a concern around, with obviously, again, now I'm probably drifting towards the show cow type scenario, but the high output cow is going to come under extreme pressure given the bending scenarios and how that's going to impact at farm level. Would you have concerns in that?
Yes, for sure. I suppose, Stuart, my view on that at the moment is that there's a lot of work to be done, and there's a lot of we've a lot of road to go there in terms of the whole environmental piece, because for sure the nitrates directive at the moment is having an impact there in terms of, you know, production level on the bandings and stuff like that. But then the flip side of that is a higher production cow in general, so long as we're not creating a system that's using too much any inputs. But in general, a higher production cow is a more carbon efficient cow, because they have a higher output per unit of carbon input. So there's some balance to be found there too, I think. And as well as that, when you layer upon that then the whole beef side of it, or the whole kind of social responsibility that dairy farmers have around their beef calves, there's some balance to be struck there too, because again, there's the whole tension between having a cow that's of a body size to produce a valuable beef calf, but not so much so that it's an inefficient dairy cow. So, and I think this is where the research is going to inform a lot of the direction over the next couple of years, and some balance been found. But I think, you know, we've yet to put all the pieces together there, I think.
Yeah, sure. I suppose it's very much, while we kind of knew it was coming, it's only in recent times that we really started to work hard on trying to find solutions around a lot of it too. Like, so it's in its infancy, really.
It is, but I think and you know, there's credit due in a few areas here too. And again, it goes back to a lot of the work with Teagasc and ICBF and the industry as a whole. But I think some of the gains that we've made in terms of EBI and fertility and longevity and solids production are going to be of huge value when it comes to kind of pivoting things slightly to deal with the environmental challenges. And having a good breeding program as a nation is going to be very important in that respect too, that we can quickly identify the genetics that work best and quickly build on those and implement them. So I suppose I'm, you know, comfortable enough in that we're due for a few years of an evolution, but hopefully no complete change. No, we're not going from going east to suddenly going west.
Yeah, it's positioned well to kind of deal with the changes that are coming. You actually, you have a point there about data quality actually that you didn't pick up on. I presume that's just like you said in terms of being able to verify sires and verify parentage and so forth. And I suppose genomics plays a big part in that for you as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, again, it's just a principle of the organization is that we're, providing good data on our animals and that there's a good quality of data feeding into the national systems. And so IHFA would have insisted a number of years ago that all pedigree registered stock bulls would have been genotyped. So you have, higher quality EBI data, and then you also have that genomic data for parentage verification and stuff like that. So that's just an example of that, and I think that's more and more important as we go forward. And it's important just to maintain the integrity of the herd book as much as anything else, but it's if we have good data, we can make good decisions with it.
Yeah, I think that was one of the points you were making to me earlier. We'll say that's the next step up in terms of what pedigree is offering. So if you're buying pedigree stock, you have all that level of assurance that goes with it, maybe. So that's one of your USPs, I suppose, is the term that you'd use.
Yeah. And I would think, there's a couple of things there, Stuart, around, what value do pedigree stock have? But I think it's about being sure of what you have. The cows in the pedigree herd book are of good quality. There's kind of a recognition there from the farmer point of view that if it's a pedigree herd, it's generally a farmer who wants to make genetic gain, who wants to have good cows, and there's a reliability there behind it that they're also going to want to care for their cows and provide them, good animal husbandry. And, there's a whole package there around it that just kind of says that they're quality animals and it's a well-run farm. And we want to do things as best we can, I suppose. And that's across any breeding goal and any farm system.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, very good. So I suppose, do you want to move on to what's happening next week? Or?
Yeah, if you just, I'll skip on here to the, I've talked about everything I had on slides here anyway. So let me talk about the what we'll be doing over the next couple of weeks. So we have a couple of open days coming up. So I'll just talk through what you're going to see on those and what they're all about. So the first one is on the 7th of July. In Teagasc Holsteins near Brewery in County Limerick. Aidan and Sally Frawley and family. So what we're going to see there, first of all, it's our National Open Day, right? So there's a couple of things happening from our point of view, but let's say if you're using it as a day out, as a farm visit to go out and get some information, what are you going to see? You're going to see a family farm where all the family is involved, and it's a really well-run farm where there's enthusiasm behind what's going on. It's a converted beef unit. I think it was in the early 2000s. And Sally and Aidan were getting set up, and they moved on to a converted beef unit and started milking there in the early 2000s with a herd of animals that was bought or moved across from one of the other farms in the family. It's a really well managed herd, excellent grassland, excellent nutrition. You're going to see the results of genetic gain. They have a system that's not your typical system, Stuart. It's a high input, high output kind of winter milk system. They're about, I think, a third of the cows calving in the winter and about 2/3 in the spring. So it's not your typical system, but you're still going to see excellent grassland management. You're still going to see the results of breeding for that system and the type of cow that they prefer, which is a kind of a Holstein. It's a showy type cow, but that's what suits their farm. But and you're also going to see what goes on, let's say, from an IHFA point of view. We have the stock judging competitions, which is our national club stock judging competitions, and also the mock stock judging. And also then anyone who comes along can enter the open stock judging. So that's a bit of fun for anyone who's never done anything like that before. We also have some of our awards. We have our National Herds Competition Awards, and also our Gold and Diamond Cow Awards, which are for cows that have produced really high lifetime fat and protein production. We also have a photo competition on the day, which is a new thing we're doing this year. So again, generally aimed at younger people, but it's open to everybody. Maybe people who aren't involved in the competition or the stock judging or something like that, they can go find a cow on the herd that they like, take a promotional photograph of that cow as it stands in the field, or also take a nice scenic photograph and enter it into a competition, and we'll have some nice prizes available for anyone who wants to do that. And then also the herd is having an elite sale. They have, I think, about 50 animals, young stock, that they're having on an auction in that evening. That's at 4:00 in the evening. Hopefully, they'll get some good prices for their animals on the day. In a couple of weeks after that, then on the 21st of July, we have the Pure Friesian Open Day. It's in the Quealy family down in Kilmacthomas in Waterford. A similar event, but obviously focused on a pure Friesian system, an entirely spring calving system, very different cow type, different farming system. But again, you will see the benefits of a good breeding policies and good breeding goal for the farm system.
Good. Yeah. So as you said at the outset, two very different sides to the organisation, but all under the one umbrella at the same time. So there's a bit of everything available for whoever wants people can pick whatever they want or desire out of IHFA for to use in their own farms potentially. Well,
that's it. And I think, as IHFA and in general, I think we have to appreciate good cows for what they are for the system. And, there's two examples of cows that are bred for the farm and for the farmer as well, because this is what both those farmers want to see in their herd of cows and want to see in their farming system. So, and we should appreciate that. And everybody's farm decisions are just as valid as anybody else's farm decisions. And so long as they're going towards genetic gain and making improvements, we're all for it. So.
Yeah, I suppose an important point to sum it up, I suppose, really is I'm actually involved with the European dairy farmers there at the moment. They just happen to be in Cork, and comment that was made by one of the host farms that they're on yesterday was that obviously European systems are very different to Irish systems, but any system done well can be a profitable system.
Yes, absolutely. And I think the important thing there is you recognise what drives profit in your system and go for that. And not be distracted by other systems. And I think we've been very good at that in Ireland over the last few years, and we probably learned the hard way in terms of let's say the RBI system and trying to use imported genetics to suit a spring calving seasonal production system, and it doesn't really work.
Yeah.
So and I think we have to be proud of the gains we made in Ireland and recognize that we've done a really, really good job and can continue.
Yeah, and I suppose the interesting, again, I might keep harping back to it, but like the show cows are the creme de la creme, and they're for the show up piece, but that grassland management, as you've pointed out with Frawley's, even though they'd be classified as having a higher type cow maybe, but grassland management is still important, and Joe and James will always talk about the importance of grassland management in those winter milk systems as well. And that grass is a key component in Irish dairy systems, and when done right, regardless of the system, that's what's underpinning the profit of those.
Yeah, and absolutely, and I think
and the genetics, I should say.
well, absolutely, and the right genetics for the system, absolutely. But we have a huge USP in Ireland around the whole grazed grass and cows out in pasture, and we want to maintain that. Nobody wants to adopt a European system in general. we have markets that dictate the cow milk must be produced in the winter, and specialized farms to do that, and that tweaks the breeding program a little bit. But I think, and as we go forward and are mindful of some of the environmental challenges, you know, some of the research there is very much around maximizing that grazed grass and minimizing imported feed. So it all kind of keeps feeding back in a loop to that good Irish system. It can be very efficient from a profitability point of view and from an environmental point of view, with, you know, some small tweaks, and hopefully only small tweaks, but it's a good system. And it's I think, you know, looking at international systems and what goes on in other countries, it's a very strong position for the Irish dairy industry, the types of farms we have. And I think it's up to IHFA as an organization to make sure we keep that in mind and keep trying to promote breeding for that type of system.
Okay, and then the final question, Laurence, I suppose, before we finish up, given the emphasis that's now been put on sex semen use and so forth, would IHFA have concerns in terms of the progress for the breed into the future? And have you plans, we'll say, I suppose, to deal with that, maybe that you're going to have less opportunity to find these elite animals maybe coming along, and there'll have to be more of a plan put into making sure that they do arrive on the ground?
Yeah, well, I think definitely, Stuart, it's going to change the dynamic of the breeding programs. So, and I think one of the immediate effect on that too, and I suppose we haven't really talked about it at all, is it immediately puts more emphasis on the beef side of the equation there. And I think it's very important for IHFA members to upskill themselves in terms of the dairy beef index and the types of genetics that are there. I think, you know, that'll be second nature to a lot of IHFA members. You know what I mean? They kind of live the breeding side of things from the dairy side. I think it's very easy to get an appreciation of the genetic drivers from a beef side of things, where we can still manage calving and gestation, but get a slightly better quality beef animal that's going to deliver a return, and hopefully, you know, lead to return buyers for the breeder farms, local calf buyers. But it is going to mean we're going to have less bull calves born, particularly less bull calves born from our heifers, and they tend to be our best genetics. So it does put pressure back on that we structure more our breeding programs to ensure that we're getting sufficient bull calves from our best genetics, so we have choice in what goes forward. And I think there's just more planning that has to be done in that regard, and a little bit more structure put on it. And I think we can get over it. I suppose the more sex semen that's used, the more pressure it will put on it, and that. But I think it's one of the good things from an Irish industry point of view as well, is that we have lots of farms breeding elite quality bulls. There's hundreds of farms across the country that have been able to do that. And part of that is because, you know, high EBI genetics gets used widespread on those farms. And I suppose what we've seen in other countries is, as you go to more sex semen and breeding programs become more sophisticated, is sometimes to get taken out of the hands of the farmers and into the hands of you know, breeding companies, which can be farmer owned in some circumstances, and that's fine. But the farmer themselves loses direct control. And I wouldn't like to see that happening in Ireland. I'd like to see that, you know, there's still a large number of farms capable of breeding bulls that are good enough for breeding, and particularly for AI. But it will become more difficult. There's no doubt about it.
Okay, very good. So look, we've come up to the end of the slot there, basically. So thanks very much for coming on, Laurence. I'd like to wish you all the very best in your role as CEO of IHFA for the future. It was a very interesting discussion with you in terms of the role of IHFA. It actually opened my eyes a little bit in terms of some of the things that you are doing. Thanks for coming on, Laurence, and we'll talk to you again. Take care, and wish everybody well for the week, and take care.
That's all for this week's Let's Talk Dairy webinar series, and don't forget to look out for more bonus episodes each week. I'll be back with our usual Dairy Edge interview on Monday, so do listen in then. I'm Emma Louise Coffey, and thanks for listening.